Much, everyone. It is good to be here today, once again reiterating that our purpose as Conservatives is to restore the promise of Canada that anyone who works hard can get a good, affordable life and a nice house on a safe street, that your success is determined by your hard work, not by government favoritism, that this is a meritocracy, not an aristocracy, where the government works for the working class, for the seniors, and for everyday people who build this country every single day. That can only happen if the Prime Minister is focused on the public interest rather than on private interests. On Friday, we finally got a look at the Prime Minister's many financial interests that he kept carefully hidden throughout the election and about which he told numerous falsehoods during that same campaign. And so these are what the revelations tell us. One, that Mr. Carney was not upfront or honest with Canadians during the election. He made numerous false statements he would have known were false when he made them. Two, there is a cornucopia of conflicts of interest in these investments, like we have never seen before from a Canadian Prime Minister. Let me go through and document all of these claims one by one. First of all, during the election campaign, Mr. Carney said, and I quote, "I own nothing but cash and personal real estate, and that's not going to change in public life." Well, it turns out, while he said that, he knowingly owned 574 stocks and deferred profits and stock options in Brookfield and other companies. So it was patently and now provably false for him to say he owned nothing but cash and real estate. Two, "My assets are now in a blind trust, so I don't know what exactly is in there." That too is false. He must have known what was in that blind trust because he was the one that filled out the paperwork for the Ethics Commissioner to report those holdings. So he knew exactly what was in his blind trust, and he just did not want Canadians to know before they went to the polls. Finally, he said, and I quote, "I do not have a connection with Brookfield Asset Management." Well, it turns out that he has continuing stock options and deferred share units in Brookfield Asset Management. And these options cannot be sold, or at least not easily, and we have no reason to believe they have been. So when he said that he had no connection to Brookfield, he was stating a patent falsehood. Now, why should we care? Why should Canadians care about this? Well, Mr. Carney has shown in the past his willingness to use his political connections in order to profit himself. For example, he said, let's see here, he gave public endorsement of Westinghouse in the leaders' debate. Westinghouse is a nuclear energy company which Brookfield is invested in. He has announced he's going to spend billions of dollars on modular homes. Brookfield is invested in modular homes. He says he wants to subsidize heat pumps. Brookfield is invested in heat pumps. He says that jet fuel, in the past he has said that he helped influence regulatory changes forcing aviation companies to buy certain kinds of jet fuel that one of his companies was invested in, so that air passengers have to pay more for their airline ticket to subsidize this specialty jet fuel that profits a company in which Mr. Carney had a financial interest. And the list of potential conflicts goes on and on. How can he possibly be involved in developing a budget when all the tax policies could impact on his investments directly or indirectly? How could he address things like competition policy when his companies might be impacted? Then there's, for example, the digital services tax. The digital services tax is paid by some of the companies that he is invested in, and therefore he has a potential or perceived conflict of interest in that as well. So Conservatives are calling for two things today. One, we call on the Prime Minister to come before you and explain the contradiction. How is it that he was telling Canadians that he only had real estate and cash when he knowingly had stock options and other deferred benefits? How is it that he claimed he didn't know what was in his blind trust when we now learn that he knew exactly what was in that trust? And how is it that he said that he had no financial interest in Brookfield when he knew exactly that he had stock options and deferred share units? Finally, so we want him to explain why he told Canadians the opposite of the truth during the election campaign. Second, We're calling on the Prime Minister to sell his investments, turn them into cash, hand them to a trustee who can invest them in a way that is completely blind to him, so that he does not have any knowledge of what he owns. That is the spirit of a blind trust. A blind trust is meant to be something that the owner does not know anything about. That's what it means to be blind of the assets. But right now, Mr. Carney is clearly not blind of what he holds, because even we know what he holds due to this disclosure. And this will put him in an impossible position where he will be conflicted at every turn. So either he will have to get up 3 or 4 times every cabinet meeting to avoid stumbling over the 100+ potential conflicts that the Ethics Commissioner has identified, or he will act in the cabinet to potentially favor his own interests. Neither of those possibilities is acceptable. And so, again, we call for him to explain the falsehoods, sell his holdings, end the conflicts, work for Canadians. We need a Prime Minister whose only purpose is serving the Canadian people, to reverse the massive damage Liberals have done, to reverse the out-of-control immigration, inflation, crime, debt, and our spiraling economy. And here we are, a Prime Minister who's going to be constantly distracted by his private interests when the public interest is in such desperate need of attention. Look at how bad things are in Canada today, and getting worse. The debt is growing faster under Mark Carney than it was under Justin Trudeau. Mr. Carney is spending more in his first budget bill, or his first financial bill, spending more than Justin Trudeau was spending. The deficit looks like it could be even bigger under Carney than it was under Trudeau. We have rising unemployment, a crisis of jobs for our young people. Housing is still unaffordable, and Mr. Carney has so far kept the unsustainable immigration numbers that Justin Trudeau left behind, numbers that are overwhelming housing, health care, and jobs that are dividing our country and breaking up any notion of integration. We need a Prime Minister who's fully focused on undoing the damage that the Liberals have done, not continuing that damage and focusing on his private interests. Conservatives stand ready to help. We will propose amendments to the ethics law that will make these changes that I have just called for, make them law rather than just good practice. We want this to be once again a country where the leaders work for the people, where hard work pays off, where government is on the side of everyday people who work hard, pay their taxes, and play by the rules. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll now take questions from the floor.